Hey, welcome to the Stanton Show. I'm Stan. This is where I bring in people who've actually done the work in the field and we pull apart what's real. No fluff, no generic advice, just the stuff worth knowing. Today's guest works in recruitment, which means she spends her days deciding who gets the call and who doesn't. She sees the applications, she runs the interviews, she makes the calls, and she knows exactly where most candidates lose the game before it even begins. The episode is called The Science Behind Getting Hired. We're going to get into that actually catches a recruiter's eye, what kills a great application before it's read, how AI has changed the rules, and what the job market looks right now from the inside. If you're job hunting, hiring, or just want to understand how this whole machine works, stay with us. Let's get into it. My today's guest is Melissa Grabiner. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Melissa, before I get into anything, tell us who you are, what you do in your own words, not the LinkedIn version or the social media version.
Sure. Yeah. So for starters, I live in the United States in Chicago, Illinois, and I have about 25 years of experience working in talent acquisition. I spent the majority of my career, 18 years, at a company called Takeda Pharmaceuticals, which is a Fortune 500 biotech pharmaceutical company. And I was the global director of talent acquisition. So I basically led talent acquisition for the organization. And what happened was, like I said, I live in Chicago and they moved my position to the East Coast in Boston and they offered me a relocation. But at the time, my sons were in high school. So I decided to not move with the company. And I ended up leaving after a really terrific 18 years, life changing, really. And then since I've left there, I have been doing talent acquisition consulting for biotechnology companies. Most of them are startup organizations, and I help them for a variety of their TA needs, whether it's scaling processes, putting together technologies, processes, procedures, and just a lot of hiring. The other business I started was I am a job search coach, and I work with job seekers on optimizing their LinkedIn profiles, rewriting their resumes, job search strategies, and interview prep. So my days are basically split between working for my clients on the TA side and then working for my job seeker clients. But certainly feel very blessed to have the career that I have. Looking back, one of my sons recently asked me if I could turn the clock back, would I do anything differently? And regarding my career, I certainly wouldn't. Having the ability to hire people and change lives is very, very impactful and profound. And I feel very, very blessed.
Amazing. And that is exactly the next question I was about to ask. I mean, what really pulled you in? Was there a moment where you thought, oh, okay, this is it. I want to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started my career, and this was many, many years ago, I actually was working in an HR position. And I did that for a couple years. And this was when I was at Takeda. And the business that I was supporting was expanding their talent acquisition group. And the senior leaders of my business tapped me on the shoulder and said, we'd love for you to really start the TA department from inception, and you can have the budget you need, you can have the headcount you need. Create this department the way you see fit. And the senior leaders put a lot of trust in me, and it was a little nerve-wracking because I didn't necessarily have a playbook to go off of, but I did have the trust of senior leaders. And fast forward quite a few years, when I left the organization, I had a team of 24 direct reports. We managed over 3,000 employee hiring globally every year. And so it was a lot of hiring from my team. It was an incredible experience. But, people ask me all the time how I got into recruiting. And really it was, I started at the company in an HR role, and apparently senior leaders were happy with my performance, that they put the trust in me to start this whole new division in talent acquisition. So certainly been very blessed.
Wow. So Melissa, you've been there. What is the biggest misconception people have when it comes to recruitment, how it actually works?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. And I think now specifically because the job market has changed so drastically. But, in thinking about this question, I think probably the biggest misconception that job seekers have is that if they meet the requirements, then they're going to get an interview. And most candidates assume that job descriptions are checklists, but recruiters and hiring managers are really trying to find someone who meets 100% of the requirements. What they're trying to do is find someone who is a low risk to hire, is likely to succeed quickly, can onboard easily into the team dynamics, and align very well with management. One other misconception, and I see this a lot on LinkedIn, I see a lot of posts about this, is the whole, applicant tracking system, right? And so a lot of job seekers believe that an ATS will decide their fate. Tools like applicant tracking systems, and I've used 13 of them over the years, so I intimately have a very good understanding of how they work. Tools like ATSs, they filter resumes, but they don't necessarily reject good candidates in the way that people think. I think a lot of times people think, well, my resume isn't ATS compliant, or, someone doesn't read my resume, the ATS is reading my resume. What ATSs do more often than not is they help recruiters reduce the volume from maybe hundreds of applicants to 10, maybe 10 applicants. And what ATSs also do is they surface keyword matches based on the job description and based on the resume, but it still requires human judgment immediately afterwards. So the bottleneck in recruiting isn't necessarily the ATS software, it's really the human attention and time. And the other misconception is, and I think this is important, is especially in today's job market, is that networking is optional. This is probably the biggest structural misconception. In many roles today, especially competitive ones, hiring is very much influenced by internal referrals, recruiters sourcing from their own networks, and then prior visibility. So, what is your content on LinkedIn? What is your LinkedIn presence? Um, so, what I always say to my clients when I'm coaching them is that when you're in a job search, specifically in 2026, specifically, I know in the United States, networking is the way to go. 90% of my clients end up landing new jobs through their networking efforts. It's not through a job posting. And so, what I always say to my clients is that when you're in a job search, if you simply apply to jobs all day, refresh your browser every 30 minutes for a new job posting to appear, you're going to be one of hundreds, if not thousands, of applicants for that one job. Networking and making connections is the way to move the needle in this job market. So, when you hear about a lot of hires coming through referrals and connections, this really is truth.
Yeah, absolutely. You did make the point. And Melissa, like a lot of these clients, and in fact, a lot of my peers and industry peers and the people that I've worked with, they have a very specific question. They say, when you look at a CV from a recruiter's point of view, or maybe their LinkedIn profile, what do you see in the first 10 seconds? What is it that impresses you?
Sure. So typically when I'm scanning a CV or a LinkedIn profile, I'm scanning for signals that basically answer one question. Is this person clearly relevant? Are they credible? And are they worth my time to keep digging into? This judgment happens very quickly and a lot of times unconsciously. So, what captures my attention is immediate role clarity. So, it's the first thing that I see on the top of a resume or, in their experience section on LinkedIn. I need to be able to tell very quickly what someone does and at what level do they do it. So, in other words, senior HR business partner supporting 2,000 employees in healthcare, or finance leader specializing in FP&A for SaaS companies, versus experienced professional seeking new opportunities, or let's say vogue or generic job titles that don't anchor level or function. So, because of the volume that recruiters are faced with, they truly are scanning a resume and a LinkedIn profile for 10 to 15 seconds. So we need to be able to immediately understand the role clarity. We also need to understand the relevance to the role that I'm trying to fill. So I am scanning for keywords, not just ATS keywords, but contextually meaningful alignment. In other words, are they coming from the same industry? What is the scope? What is their team size, perhaps revenue or complexity? And are they currently working in a similar function, or do they have those transferable skills? The other thing I look at also is evidence of progression and impact. So even in a quick scan, I look for trajectory. Have they had promotions? Have they expanded the scope of their roles? Have they had increased responsibilities over time? And then also, of course, credibility. Do they come from well-known or established companies? Do they have clear versus inflated job titles? Is there consistency of dates? So in other words, do they have a lot of gaps on their resume? Is there a lot of overlap? And then, of course, this is important, clean formatting on a resume, because that signals attention to detail. And then, of course, I guess, the last thing is a quick story shape of the profile. So even in seconds, I'm able to understand, and partly because I've been doing this for so long, but I'm able to see, does this career make sense as a narrative? Does each role logically build onto the last? Or does it feel scattered and hard to interpret? Profiles and resumes that feel coherent, they gather more attention, even if they're not the most impressive on paper.
Melissa, I might be jumping the gun here, but when you say, yeah, there's a certain scope to writing your, let's say on your LinkedIn, you got your profile headings. Hey, I'm the head of marketing and the head of growth. This is what I do. But then a lot of people have come back saying, the AI has changed everything. The hiring is changed, both for candidates who are using to write applications and for recruiters who are using to screen the applications. Because uh, with these tools that came to the picture, which is ChatGPT or Claude, everybody's just putting in some prompts and they get a well-organized ADS resume. So how do you find somebody wherein, the world is so AI based, and how do you find a right credible candidate for that particular person, for that
Yeah,
role?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And this goes back to how AI has changed the game for hiring, both from a candidate perspective, using it to write resumes and applications, and for the recruiters that are using it to screen. I will say that for the companies that I'm currently consulting with, they don't post their jobs. And the reason they don't post their jobs is because of AI. Because what was
Okay.
happening is, and I think this is happening with a lot of people, and I think a lot of recruiters are being faced with this, is that everyone's application is looking the same. So, what a lot of people are doing is they're taking their resume and they're taking a job description and they're putting both of them through AI. And then what happens is AI is then creating a resume that is a perfect match to the job description. So, all of these resumes start to look the same, and it's hard to understand what the source of truth really is. What I do for my clients is I use my LinkedIn recruiter license to find candidates on the platform, because anyone can modify a resume based on the job, but people generally are not changing their LinkedIn profiles every time they apply for a different position. So to me, the source of truth is really one's LinkedIn profile. The other reason why I am using my LinkedIn recruiter license is because when my clients would post a role, within a matter of an hour, they would get hundreds of applications. So from a volume perspective, it's a lot to sift through when a company posts a job and you're getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of applications for one particular job. So the volume combined with the AI is having a lot of companies kind of take pause and say, really, what is the best way to find people where we know what we're looking at is really the source of truth regarding their background? And typically that can be found on a LinkedIn profile, which is why my clients hired me, was simply to find candidates using my LinkedIn recruiter license. But regarding AI, it certainly has changed the game in hiring from both the employer and the candidate perspective.
You're absolutely right on that, Melissa. And I was coming to the next question, and I think I kind of jumped my gun there. But then LinkedIn has become everything, like most, and I'm pretty sure, and you also agree to this. A lot of people are using it wrong. What is it that they're doing wrong, and how is it hurting them?
Yeah, I know, to be honest, I've been on LinkedIn for a long time, and I'm very in tune with the algorithm changes and the functionality changes, both as a user, um, as just someone who, enjoys being on LinkedIn, but also as someone who uses the system to help my clients. LinkedIn has certainly become a powerhouse in the world of work. But I will say, in terms of what people are doing wrong, I think there's a few things that are important to point out. The first is most people are treating LinkedIn like an online resume instead of a relationship building and visibility platform. And so a few of the biggest mistakes that hurt them is having a profile that reads like a job description instead of showing value and impact. There's also a lot of people that are invisible on the platform until they suddenly need a job. So these are people that perhaps have a profile, but they're never active on the platform and they're never engaging with other people. Connecting with people, but never engaging or building relationships is another thing. Anyone can click a button and press connect and connect with someone, but it's about engaging with those people. So on LinkedIn, when you send someone a connection request, you have an opportunity to write an actual note with them. So whenever I connect with someone, I don't simply click connect. I actually write a thoughtful couple sentences in terms of why I'm connecting with them. And my hope is to start building a relationship with those people. The other thing I see this a lot with my clients that I help on the job search side is a lot of them are using generic headlines such as experienced professional seeking opportunities or I'm currently open to work. Well, that doesn't really tell anyone anything about your experience. You have to use your page very, very strategically, specifically if you're in a job search. Another miss I see from a lot of people is sending cold messages that immediately ask for help or referrals without trying to build a relationship prior to the ask. Um, One thing I work with my clients on from the job search side is, and I do this for their resumes and their profiles, is showing measurable accomplishments or outcomes. So it's one thing to say, I led a marketing team. It's another thing to say, I led a marketing team of 12 marketing managers and we improved processes by 43% and increased revenue by 52%. What recruiters are looking for are quantifiable achievements using dollar amounts and percentages, which show the impact. So it's one thing to say, this is what I did, but the resumes and the profiles that move the needle are the ones that show the impact of your accomplishments and what those outcomes are. The
Mm.
other thing I'll say about this really quickly is I think a lot of people use LinkedIn to apply endlessly to the different job postings, but what they're not doing is they're not leveraging warm connections. And like I said a little bit earlier, if someone is simply applying to jobs all day and not making those connections with people who work at the company, they're not going to move the needle in their job search. It's the people that are leveraging connections and establishing relationships. Those are the people that are using LinkedIn in the right way.
So, Melissa, before we move forward, I I know that you are in LinkedIn and you've kind of helped a lot of people. So for the viewers and listeners who are listening to us, so the viewers and listeners, Melissa's got an amazing profile on LinkedIn. I will put my link in the description back in there. So Melissa, you do help people with writing LinkedIn profiles and resumes, do you?
I do. I do. It's interesting how this started is about a year and a half to 2 years ago. I was starting to get a lot of messages on LinkedIn from people saying, I really need help with my resume. Can you help me? Or I really need help with my profile. I don't know what to put on my profile. Can you help me? And I vividly remember saying to my husband, I think I might have a business here because I have so many years working in recruiting and I have so many years being active on LinkedIn that I felt like this would be a perfect small business to start using the experience and the expertise that I have. So I started this small business, and it's one of the greatest things I've ever done because when my clients who I help contact me and say, Melissa, I'm so happy. I just received a job offer. Or Melissa, I had this happen to me this week. One of my clients reached out to me and 3 days after I had his resume finished, after him and I worked together, he had 4 interviews already scheduled.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when my clients share their success stories with me,
Yeah,
that to me is everything. Because
amazing.
my because my goal is for my clients to land jobs, right? And so a lot of my clients call me they don't know what else to do. They've been going at this for 6 months, 9 months, a year. They're at their end of the rope, and they come to me in tears and say, I don't know what I can do. I don't know what else to do. So when
Yeah.
I'm able to help those people, it's the greatest thing in the world,
I'm,
truly.
I'm, I'm sure, and I've been there as well because uh, before I began this podcast, and of course my two consultancies where I'm working with them, so I'm in the retention space more or less. I used to apply endlessly on LinkedIn, and of course I was doing all that mistakes that you just kind of pointed out, and it now makes sense from a recruiter's point of view what is actually a recruiter kind of looking at. So moving on, Melissa. But the job market has shifted a lot, What are you seeing on the ground right now? What's harder? What's easier? What do you project in the next 5 years the job market is going to look like?
I mean, I could say pretty confidently that I think it's only going to get worse. And it almost pains me to say this because, you know, the I see how many people are struggling right now, but what's happening, at least in the United States, is that companies are doing these mass layoffs. So what's happening is it's saturating the job market with more competition. Oracle last month, they got rid of 30,000 employees in one day. 6 a.m. in
Yeah,
the morning,
yeah.
30,000 employees woke up to an email that their job was immediately eliminated. A
But
lot
how
of
do
these
you how do you even respond to that? I mean, it's so big.
it's truly horrible what's going on. I remember when COVID hit,
Yeah,
companies couldn't hire people fast enough when things kind of started to lift a little bit. The pendulum, I always kind of look at it like a pendulum. So when we were in that COVID phase, the pendulum was more towards like a candidate driven market. And now the pendulum has completely gone the other way, where it's an employer driven market. But what's happening is, because the job market is so saturated, companies are taking their time making decisions. They're interviewing more candidates to make sure that they're hiring the right people, and they're being much more selective. So these hiring timelines are, sometimes these companies are taking months and months to make a decision, and candidates are putting up with it because they don't have a choice, because this is the way a lot of these companies are operating. And I also think with AI, and I'm very in tune with, the business world and the news, and I'm very in tune with that. But, every day you're hearing about more and more companies that are doing these layoffs, and a lot of it is because of AI. And so if someone is not in a function that is necessarily AI driven, a lot of these jobs I think that are disappearing are never going to come back.
yes,
So what I suggest to my clients is, and sometimes I hate to say it to them, but I mean, I'm just being honest, is that, like, look what I did. I started two businesses and I've never been happier. Like, is there a way you could start, maybe not relying on corporate America, but taking a bet on yourself? Do you have skills that you could maybe start consulting, or you could maybe think about doing something different? Because the job market is only going to get more saturated with more competition. It's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. So you look at these people that have been looking for jobs for 6, 12 months, the competition is getting fiercer, and
yeah,
it's not getting better for these people. So what
yes.
else can these people do to stay afloat? It's a tough situation.
I completely get your part, Melissa, and I do agree. I mean, it's the same here in Australia because Australia is more or less, if you look at Australia, it's more trade-driven businesses. It's more trade-driven economy. We've got a lot more immigration in here. Plus, there's a lot of mining that happens in Australia. So a lot of physical jobs and labor jobs are secure for now, but I think a lot of service-based industries, which are more computer oriented or software oriented, for example, like marketers, all the graphic designers, they're finding it tough here, to be honest with you. And the businesses are shrinking as well. It's not just the employee market that's taking a hit. I think so. I think that's a good point to, in fact, have a podcast on, Melissa. So I think we will come back to the viewers on this, how you started off your two businesses and what is it that the people can do to start off their businesses.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. I'll just say this really quickly. The best decision I made was taking a bet on myself, because, um, like I said earlier, I was at a company for 18 years. I got I wasn't able to move, so I had to leave. And then I took another job for 18 months. I got laid off from that job. And then I started doing consulting. But I just was realizing as time was going on and the job market was getting more saturated, I never wanted to rely on an employer and a CEO deciding my fate. And the truth of the matter is, everyone at the end of the day is expendable, right? We are all line items on a
That's
spreadsheet.
true.
And if a company doesn't need you, I mean, so many of my clients, my job search clients,
Yeah.
these are top performers. Last week, I worked with a senior vice president for Microsoft in
Oh, wow.
information technology. This guy was a 21-year veteran of Microsoft, and he
Wow.
got eliminated.
These are big roles, Melissa. You're talking about these are the guys you talked to when you were young. You wanted to be one of them, and it was a perfect American dream. Uh, I mean, it's different.
Hmm.
Well, what do you even have to say about it? It just doesn't make any sense, to be honest with you.
It
I mean,
doesn't.
perfect. All right, Melissa, we are back to our last round. So it's going to be a rapid fire. I've been fired in 3 or 4 questions and take a quick response from you. So the first question is one thing you would tell every job seeker to do this week that most of them are not doing.
Network. Reach out to 15 to 20 people a day on LinkedIn. Um, don't just send a connection request, but send an actual message with your connection request. Reach out to people and ask for 15 minutes of their time for a coffee chat, a virtual coffee chat in 15 minutes. Reach out to the companies that you're interested in, connect with the recruiters at the company, connect with people that are in a similar job that you would be interested in, and connect with people that are at a higher level. So, in other words, if you're looking for a marketing manager role, see if there are people who are VPs of marketing or directors of marketing that you can connect with. But networking is going to move the needle more than anything else in this job search. The other thing I would say is, and this is, I think, very, very important, is that take care of your health, take care of your
Yeah,
mental health,
yeah.
take care of your physical health. Don't lose sight of that. I think that's really, really important. Between the networking and taking care of yourself, those are probably the two most important pieces of advice I.
Amazing. That's so great, and I think it's going to help a lot of people listening to this particular podcast. Because I've not seen a lot of podcasters or maybe people on the internet telling people what to do urgently. Because yes, they're all saying, okay, we need to do this, but how to do that is something that Melissa can help you out with, viewers and listeners. All right. The next is, what is the best career advice you ever received?
Yes, the best career advice I ever received was from my father, who I love so much. He once told me that skills will get you in the room, relationships will get you chosen, and your reputation will keep you moving.
That is so practical, isn't it? Dads have the best advice, as I can tell
Best,
you. I mean,
best.
there's nothing. I mean, you could take all the literature you want to, but then walks in a dad and he tells you something, and it's absolutely right. Because
Yeah.
I've had these experiences a lot, and I think that's my mom and my dad. So my dads are more practical, as is usually what dads are. It's such a great advice, Melissa. I would have. I mean, if he's there, I will absolutely love to have him on podcast and see how you were as a kid, and what advice he has to offer to our viewers and listeners as well. Right.
Yeah.
Let's come to the last question, and I think this is where I am interested in, and how I got in touch with you. Is a lot of people would also want to see and find you. Where can they find you and work with you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, certainly on LinkedIn, I'm always very happy to connect with people and meet new friends and form new relationships. And I also have a brand new website that I just launched.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. My husband was my partner in this. It's been fun. It's been a labor of love, but it's basically my first name, last name.net. So it's melissagrabner.net. And that's where you can read, prior client testimonials. I have links to all of the podcasts I've been on. There's a link to my services. I also write a newsletter every week, a free weekly newsletter for job seekers. And from my website, they can subscribe to my newsletter as well.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Melissa. And all the viewers and listeners who are watching this podcast or listening to the podcast, I'm going to put all the links that Melissa's just told us in our descriptions. And of course, that's going to be on our social medias as well. So you can just go talk to her. She's an amazing personality. And I'm pretty sure we are going to bring her back for one of the episodes on how she's become a successful businesswoman, how a transformation from becoming an employee to a business owner started off, and how she's managing becoming a mom and, of course, a wife. And if possible, I bring in my partner as well. So we're going to
Yeah.
have human series as well for this particular part. Thank you, Melissa, for coming on
Thank
board.
you.
If you do have any message for viewers, they'll be more than happy to listen to you.
Yeah, and I would say, for those that are listening, first of all, thank you for listening. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I love making new friends. So
Amazing. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for being on the podcast.
thank
Okay,
you.
viewers, this is Stan signing off. Keep watching out for the next episode. Our next episode is with Dirk Mulder, who's the founder and CEO of Koala News. Koala News is an education platform, news platform that gives an information on what's happening around in the education industry in Australia. Keep watching the Stan Thin Show. Thank you.